first speaker that I'd like to welcome on the stage has been all over the creative and the agency industry for more than 2 decades. He co-founded Contagious, and he co-authored a book about their 10 commandments. Please welcome on stage Mr. Paul Kemp Robertson.
Hello, lovely to be here in one of my favorite cities in the world. I'm Paul from Contagious. So very briefly, Contagious is based in London. We are a kind of a navigation guide for the future of the marketing industry. We were founded in 2004. So my background was a combination of trade press and working on the creative side of advertising. And I just figured, I was born in 1967, it got to 2004, things like Facebook and YouTube were bubbling up, mobile phones were starting to become smart, the word viral was creeping into the lexicon, and I thought, I don't understand all this stuff that's happening. It's almost like the industry's moved 180 degrees over here, there's all this new technology, the consumers are running ahead or the audience is running ahead of the advertiser. There needs to be this repository, this space for looking at where the hell the industry is going, but through the lens of what is the best, most disruptive, effective creativity, essentially? What are these new behaviors, and what is the impact of new technology on brands? So that's the sort of Contagious universe. We look at, the argument is we'll look at 1,000 things, and we'll talk to you about 50, like the very, very best, because in order to be the best, you have to learn from the best. So that's the sort of proposition of Contagious, and we do it online, and advisory, and through events, and a magazine. So because of the position we're in, if you think about an amazing, amazing period of history from 2004 to kind of now, as I say, I mentioned earlier, YouTube didn't exist as a business. A little secret fact for you, YouTube was brought to life because, do you remember years ago in the Super Bowl when Janet Jackson's boob fell out? It was known as Nipplegate or whatever. The guys who founded YouTube couldn't find a clip of it online, and that's what gave them the idea for creating YouTube. If that doesn't say anything about bro culture in the internet, I don't know what does, but there you go. So, we hit last year, Penguin commissioned us to write a book about our experiences and the whole sort of, it's called The Contagious Commandments. You can buy it on Amazon. I've got 3 children to feed. And it's basically a kind of the 10 principles and provocations based on either trends or insights or things that we've said on stage, written about in articles, and kind of shaken our clients to say, you have to get this in order to progress and change and disrupt and so on. The reason that we wrote the book really was that we felt that there's a kind of a tension that sits at the heart of the marketing industry. My lens is very much consumer marketing as opposed to B2B, and that's what the talk's going to be about today. But we kind of sussed that there was this tension between acknowledging that award-winning, disruptive, amazing creativity is what everyone should aspire to. It's that thing that makes a difference. But then actually authorizing it, like the way that this industry is structured, the way that brands kind of respond to making decisions, there's sometimes this tension between, yes, the world is creativity is awesome, it's going to make a difference, but I can't quite sign it off. And what we mean by that is this was our first kind of T-shirt or slogan that we had when we first launched Contagious, was that, creative ideas kick the living crap, I think we had a worse word, out of non-creative ideas. It's that whole thing of creativity, if you think about it, is the last legal means of gaining an unfair advantage over your competitors, particularly now when we're getting towards price parity and product parity and convergence and so on. And creativity creates fame. It's very efficient creativity, because if you make an amazing idea, people are prepared to watch it for longer, tolerate it for longer, share it, talk about it. It becomes part of the cultural conversation versus ads and ideas that feel very boring, monologue, and uncreative. So everyone gets that. There is a distinct correlation between creative ideas and effectiveness in the marketplace. But the problem is us. As human beings, we're kind of hardwired to avoid uncertainty and despise risk. It's why, when you think about it, our ancestors ran away from hot lava and angry mammoths. There's a thread between their behavior and us now. So Cornell University did this really amazing study a few years ago where they surveyed like hundreds and hundreds of business people, including a lot of marketers. And they put them into this kind of association test where they were presented with ideas that felt new, novel, a little bit risky, a little bit unfamiliar. And at the point of having to commit to an idea, they were given like one choice. Anything that felt uncertain they did this kind of subliminal test. How do you feel right now? What are the words that are associated with this feeling that you have now? So when presented with a risky idea, people subliminally were using words like poison, vomit, agony. So this is like subliminal primeval stuff. So what the researchers were saying is that these feelings are kind of so hardwired, we don't even know we're having them. We're shutting ideas down because our brain is leaping beyond the risk to, oh, I'm going to lose my job, or this is going to go wrong, and you don't even know that you're doing it. So that is a fundamental problem. And how we sort of bring that to life, we do a lot of sort of workshops with clients, and we often say to them, right, this analogy, this is a physics professor at an American university. We say, right, okay, it's basically an experiment on the forces of energy, basically. So he's holding this very heavy stone ball, and he can release it on a chain, and it's going to come back and nearly hit him in the face. But because of the laws of conservation of energy, he knows that it won't. But it's a fucking risky thing to do. I wouldn't do it. So his students are like, so what we say, right, okay, replace the professor. Imagine this professor is the creative director of an advertising agency. It works very well because he's white and middle-aged and male, but that's a whole other speech. And the thing that he's holding is the idea, the creative idea that either he's created, his team's created, he wants to release it out into the wild or to get approved by clients, okay? So let's have a look at what happens to the idea.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
Oh my God, what was Miley doing there? Crazy, crazy. Miley is your subliminal poison, vomit, agony part of your brain. Miley is your CFO, your client, your account manager who understands how your client thinks. So it's so easy to smash an idea down. So what we're sort of saying that in our book, we reference this amazing management consultant expert called Lynn Vincent from the States. And, she talks about, it's easier to wrap yourself in your comfort blanket, to be that Miley Cyrus smashing the uncertain, disruptive idea apart. And she sort of defines, a creative idea by definition is novel and useful. I think at Contagious we talk about creativity being divergent but relevant. So something that feels a little bit off, a little bit dangerous, a little bit interesting, but is still rooted in usefulness and so on. So a creative idea by definition is novel and useful. If the idea is truly novel, it's going to have some risk attached. So that very scary word that poison, vomit, agony is associated with. But because of this risk, people often feel more comfortable maintaining the status quo, that safety blanket. Which is why if you think about advertising, it is all predicated on cliche. You think about commercials that you're all kind of drilled into watching as kids. It's like, wash is whiter, cars on mountain roads, 3 guys walking into a bar to drink some beer. All these kind of cliches because it's safe and predictable. Now, what we say is that if a safety blanket isn't enough for you at work, you can buy this ostrich pillow on Amazon for about 14 euros and literally stick it on, sit at your desk and hope that other people will take care of all the kind of weird and wonderful creative things that need to be done in your life. So a very quick question. Where do you have your best ideas? Can you shout them out? What sort of places? Where do you have those epiphany moments, those creative moments in your life? Shower? Huh? Toilet? Awesome. Dog walking? Anything else? Bed at night? Driving? Walking? Same for me with my dog. Nobody ever says at work. Ever. Even when you're in the middle of one of the most creative advertising agencies on the planet, they never say work. You didn't say work. It's weird, isn't it? We're in this creative industry and we're expected to come up with amazing ideas. And this is why, okay? This looks like a nice little fish, yes? You think he's swimming against the current, you've got this little emotional attachment to that fish. That fish is dead. Sorry to tell you. It's part of a scientific experiment looking at the fluid dynamics of biology. This fish, even when it's dead, its body is designed to keep on swimming against the current. This is what companies are like. This is your Kodaks and your Polaroids. And why the hell didn't an insurance company create Airbnb? That was the biggest issue facing Airbnb when it started, was that risk of, is it insured? What happens if it goes wrong? I don't trust. Why didn't an insurance company create Airbnb? Because they're like this. They're just swimming, keep on swimming, keep on swimming, keep on swimming. Other people will take care of the risk and so on. So don't be the company that operates like the dead fish, because eventually you will wither and you will die and smell. So it's that whole thing about it gets you into the bystander effect. Everyone aware of the smoke-filled room experiment that Columbia University did back in the 60s, I think it was, where they had these 3 tests. So they got these students off campus to say, right, we're going to ask you to do a survey about student life. So they did it where one student was sitting in a room filling out this questionnaire, and then the researchers pumped smoke into the room, and 75% of the students that were by themselves in the room ran out and raised the alarm. They repeated the experiment with 3 students, same thing, and the rate of people running out and raising the alarm dropped down to 38%. And then they repeated it again, where they had 3 students, but 2 of them were actors. And the actors were told, whatever happens, whatever stimulus comes at you when you're doing this survey, ignore it. So they were ignoring it completely, and it fell to 10% of students. And the researchers were going like, why? Just interestingly, like the smoke filling the room, you literally can't see. Why did you not run out? And one of the students said, well, we thought it was truth gas, which is very 60s. But it just kind of shows the point that if people around you are not reacting, you're less likely to react yourself. So that's the whole kind of thing of the bystander effect, the emperor's new clothes. And this is what happens within corporations, I think. We've always done it this way. You know, we're making money. It's all successful. It's fine. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to risk anything. And that's the bystander effect. So what we sort of say at Contagious and why we wrote the book was to be the one that presses the fire alarm and don't be afraid. You know, create a culture where pressing the fire alarm is absolutely fine. So the book is based around, as I say, 10 commandments, and provocations. I think the one that is relevant for today, that's one of my sort of favorites, is ask heretical questions. I think this really gets to the heart of coming up with ideas that really kind of make you stand out and so on. So by that, what do we mean? Champion awkwardness and dissent. You know, question and question and question until you get to the true heart of an issue. And then obviously empower others to do the same. You know, everybody is creative, young people, very, very senior people, they all should be able to feel as though they've got a voice and so on. So, best way to burglar-proof your house? Any ideas? No? Throw away the keys. Okay? If you throw away the keys to your house or your apartment and then try and get back in, you see it through a different light. You spot the weaknesses and the strengths. And we say that from a company point of view, can you do the same? Like, you know, look at your company from the lens of a new startup, someone that hates you, somebody that wants to take over you, or whatever. And you just start to see it in a sort of really interesting way. I think when it was socially acceptable to work at Facebook, when they hit their 10th anniversary, I think, they wrote this lovely manual for the staff. And within it was this page, which I think is really interesting. It says, basically, if we don't create the next Facebook killer, somebody else will. There's no luxury of leaving ruins in the social media internet space. So it's a good way to look at it. But if you don't believe me around the power of questions, then this very, very bright person, if Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, I would use the first 55 minutes to determine the proper questions to ask, okay? So questions are important. Brave, thorny, gnarly, kicky kind of questions are the ones that we think really start to make a difference. So I'm going to take you through some examples from the world of marketing that I think really kind of get to the nub of the power of heretical questions. Now this one, what if we confronted the fact that our product tastes like the bathwater that your grandmother died in? This was a genuine tweet written by someone about Carlsberg. There's lots of other worse ones, but things like my pint of Carlsberg tastes like naan bread. And what Carlsberg started to do was to promote these tweets and to like these tweets and to share these tweets. And people are like, what the hell? And you'll see in a second, the reason why we're saying, right, our old advertising slogan that's been around for years is, you know, probably the best lager in the world. Fast forward 20, 30 years, and we're not. You know, we're getting attacked at one level by the craft and the provenance of all these craft beers, and we're getting attacked on the other level by this health and well-being trend where it's not suddenly the done thing to drink lots of beer, but we focused on quantity over quality. So let's face it, our beer is pretty shit in comparison. So what do we do about it? And this is the pratfall effect that I mentioned earlier, is they acknowledged it, and they did it in such a brilliant way. First by, as I say, raising awareness, getting people talking about what are Carlsberg up to, and then they ran this campaign.
There's no way I'm saying that.
That is disgusting. Carlsberg tastes like a puddle of fetid camel's.
Carlsberg tastes like a urinal cube that has been in the trough for a week.
What's a urinal cube?
The little blue things.
It's like drinking the bath water your nan died in.
And then they ran a series of conventional ads into that. But you feel like you relate to them as human beings and they're being honest and transparent and so on. So one of the beauties of heretical questions as a philosophy is it gets you into this whole blue ocean strategy, that famous kind of business book. But it's that whole thing of most companies and services kind of compete in a bloodbath, where everyone's fighting over the same audience and market share. And that's what these authors behind it call the red ocean. And they're sort of saying, if you have to get into that blue ocean, that uncontested space where your competitors aren't, and that's where you have a bigger voice and more room to breathe and talk to people. So one of the best examples that we found of the blue ocean strategy came from France, and it was for Transavia, the budget airline, a bit like EasyJet. And they had this problem where they were saying, like, we just get lost, where whenever people try and buy a flight from us, we get lost in price comparison website hell. Everyone's there, it's a race to the bottom, lowest prices. We don't want to be in that space because sometimes we lose. So they decided by working with Carrefour supermarket, and again, there's a whole thing about what we recommend is 1 + 1 = 3. As a brand, can you collaborate with a brand in an adjacent category where you can both benefit from each other's strengths to get into a unique space together? So what these guys did was create a series of products like crisps, gummy bears, nuts, sodas, with Carrefour. They had a dedicated aisle that they wanted to be near the kind of wine and champagne, just to reframe the pricing. But rather than these things costing 2 or 3 euros, they cost 35 or 45 euros. But the kicker was, each one has a city name, like Dublin, Barcelona, Lisbon. And that once you'd bought it, once you'd paid for that at the checkout, there was a code inside the packaging that turned into a ticket. So you could literally walk with a packet of gummy bears from Carrefour and end up in Barcelona 3 hours later. Brilliant. So again, it just that whole reframing, anchoring bias, and so on. Again, really counterintuitive idea from the US, from Burger King. Why can't we send people to our biggest competitor? Biggest competitor for Burger King is McDonald's. They have twice as many restaurants. The brief facing the agency was we need to get more people downloading the Burger King app. No one uses our app. The market is exploding for food ordering. People need to have the Burger King app. I love this solution because, again, it was so heretical. It was basically, right, we will geofence 16,000 McDonald's restaurants around America. And if you turn up at one of these restaurants, or within a radius of it, and you open and download the Burger King app, we will reward you by allowing you to go to Burger King and buying a burger, a Whopper, for $0.01. Awesome.
Burger King wants you to come here. Yes to McDonald's.
Burger King
is trolling
its fast food rival.
So I saw this Burger King commercial where you can
get a Whopper for a penny.
Only if you open the app while you're at McDonald's.
That doesn't even make sense. You have to go to McDonald's for a Whopper?
And use Burger King BK app.
then be within 600 feet of a McDonald's restaurant.
Leveraging geolocation technology.
It's called the Whopper Detour.
Whopper Detour.
All right, so I'm currently at McDonald's right here.
Let's go for the unlock.
You unlocked the Whopper Detour.
This is a really cool promo, guys. How fun is this?
That also tapped into, people love a quest, they love a game. It's that whole kind of strategy thing of using the weight of your competitor as a judo throw for your benefit, which is what they did. And you can see the results, 27-to-1 ROI. This seriously worked, because people would turn up and buy a burger for $0.01, but they'd buy a drink, they'd bring their friends with them, they'd buy fries, and so on. And it became the #1 downloaded app in its category for weeks and weeks after this campaign ran. It was an 8-day promotion. and the kind of the legs of this thing was incredible. So in Thailand, very, very provocative, very strict censorship laws in Thailand. What do you do if you're charged with advertising narcos? Sex, drugs, violence, no way. This is what they did.
el fuego que arde tu piel, soy el agua que mata.
เดี๋ยวพี่ลองดูตัววิดีโอที่จะส่งอาจารย์ ไม่รอดครับเซ็นเซอร์ไม่ผ่านแน่นอนครับผู้ชายยืนถือปืนก็ไม่ได้นะถ้าใช้ยาไม่ได้ถ้าระเบิดถ้าอาวุธสงครามเห็นไม่ได้เลยถ้าร่วมเพศหมดสิทธิ์เลยแทบไม่เหลืออะไรเลย
traficante más poderoso en México. Esto no lo voy a contar. Soy el fuego que arde tu piel. Soy el agua que mata tu sed. El castillo, la torre, yo soy la espada.
เรื่องของนาคอสเม็กซิโกทำไมถึงโดนตัดตั้งขนาดป้ายโฆษณายังไม่มีอะไรให้ดูนอกจากตัวหนังสือยิ่งปิดดังมากใช่เนี่ยค่ะคุณผู้ชมจะเห็นป้ายต่างๆ
โอเค That was half the population interacted with that ad. So contagious ideas, if people feel they're relevant enough, they'll start to appropriate them, share them, pass them on. It's that example of the Streisand Effect. Barbara Streisand once tried to have a legal suit to get the photographs of her mansion taken off the internet. And 1,000,000 times more people suddenly went, oh, I've got to have a look at that. So it's a similar kind of thing. If you ban something and make it difficult, more people are intrigued. It's that kind of human connection. So on a more serious level, a bit of a gear change, I think with heretical questions, it can also take you into some really profound, challenging, provocative places. And I think that brands are in a unique position with their creative muscle, their media might, their awareness that they have. They're part of people's everyday lives. They can almost act as like NGOs, like replacing sometimes what a government should be doing or local authorities by having a voice and pushing an agenda that's relevant to everybody. So in Brazil, there's this really horrific, homophobic slur that's been around a long time. It's basically, this Coke is a Fanta. This man is not a proper man because he's gay. Right? Really disgusting. So what Coke thought was like, we can't have this. So they basically decided to do that judo throw thing that I mentioned earlier. And during Pride Week, they created a series of Coke cans where they put Fanta inside the Coke can. This is the world's most famous, iconic product. And it says, this Coke is a Fanta, so what? And what was lovely about it, they gave it to their own staff to kind of go out and be part of Pride Week and festival weeks and so on and share the product and share the message. So you co-opt the people that work for you. They become ambassadors. They become fighters. They become, proud to work for your kind of company. So that's where heretical questions can get you. In Germany, there's a clothing company called Paisley, men's fashion company, and they wanted to set up a women's range. And they thought, how do we have credibility setting up a women's range when we've been around for 50 years as a men's product? So they talked to women and found out what's bugging you, what's interesting, what should we talk about? And they found that in Germany, the gender pay gap is 21%. Again, horrific fact. And women are really narked by that. So what they did was they thought, okay, we'll create a currency called Fem Notes, not even Paisley Notes, but Fem Notes, with all these famous female icons all over them. And we will allow women to buy these at a 21% discount from us, and they can buy our clothes for 21% less than the men. And we'll keep this until the gender pay gap starts to go. So much so that lots of other retailers in Germany are now looking at adopting this currency because they think it's a really interesting kind of area. And it takes you into digital currencies, the whole kind of cryptocurrency. From a brand point of view, I think is really interesting. On a similar note in Germany, this tampon company, female company, were annoyed at the fact that tampons are taxed as a luxury item in Germany. It costs more to buy a tampon than caviar. And it's also more taxed than books, okay? So they basically decided, right, okay, we're going to sell books. The books will just happen to have a month's supply of tampons inside them, and you can buy the book, get the tampons for free, for less. And this caused a petition that the government is now having to debate because so many people got behind the idea from this heretical question. Staying in the same category, Essity, based in Sweden, who own Bodyform, they did this whole campaign around the fact that why is it that we can't talk about this massive stigma about period blood? Everyone has got girlfriends, girlfriends, wives, mothers, sisters, and we found that the woman who runs the campaign was saying, it's almost more acceptable to talk about, or boys have more interactivity with blood when it comes to video games and violence in movies. That's fine. As soon as their sister has got a stain on her trousers, oh my God, isn't that awful? So they thought, right, as a brand, we should get rid of those ads with the blue ink and the women's kind of like, live your life to the max with Tampax and rollerblading in white trousers, all that bollocks. It's like, no, let's do some ads where we'll see real women in the shower with blood running down their legs, with stains, and like address this stigma, educate, agitate, create a platform. And they did, and it's done, as I say, really, really well for them, and they're right in the heart of this conversation. And when we talked to, at one of our events, Most Contagious, last year, we had Martina on stage, who was the woman that signed it off. And what is really interesting, and this is where heretical questions kind of gets you, is she said, I'm going to lose my job. She was recorded before this ad went out. So I'm going to lose my job, I don't care. Because if I do, at least I will go down fighting. I will be proud of signing off this idea if it's the last thing I do in this industry. So again, really worth fighting for. So I'm just running out of time. So I think heretical questions, I think it's this thing that we talk about in the book. They're like the Russian doll. Obvious question, difficult question, awkward question. There's a guy called Hal Gregerson at MIT, and he talks about this thing called question storming. It's really worth looking up question storming. And he's saying brainstorming is for wimps. Question storming is where you get to the point of asking 50 questions. It's really tough. He said most people stop at 30, but it's that gap between 30 questions and 50 that gets you into the heresy, provocative. He said if you can get the sort of questions that everyone goes, it literally sucks the air out of a room, that's where you need to be. And it is hard, but you get there with a bit of legwork and hard work. Why? If you ask harder questions, you get better results. So I'm just going to finish with an analogy that is actually in chapter 1 of the book. I think it encapsulates everything I believe about the power of contagious ideas, the power of creativity, in one kind of story. So this is 1999 in Buenos Aires. There's this former kind of industrial wasteland that this very rich, very powerful property magnate had spent hundreds of millions of dollars taking over and building this gleaming new district called Puerto Madero, full of shops, restaurants, cinemas, hotels, whatever. So when it was nearly finished, he went to Argentina's most famous creative director, a guy called Jorge Heyman, and he said, right, I'm going to give you $4 million. I want you to come up with a media and marketing campaign to get people into my shops, my restaurants, hotels, apartments, offices, so on. So Jorge Heyman did what kind of any self-respecting creative director would do. He spent time interrogating the product. So different times of day and night, he would walk around this kind of ambitious, gleaming new place, trying to get a feel for it. And this is what I love about this story, because like 2 weeks later, he went back to his allotted time to present the campaign idea, the marketing strategy to this very rich, powerful magnate. And he basically said, sir, you don't need an advertising campaign. Apparently this guy freaked out. What the hell? I've spent hundreds of millions of dollars building this. I need people to get in to my shops, my hotels, my restaurants. What are you talking about? Are you mad? And he said, no, what you need is a bridge. He said, because I live and I work in the neighborhood that you're trying to attract people from. And for me to get from where I live and work into your new neighborhood, it's two buses, which is a pain in the arse. It's a taxi, which is expensive. Or if I walk, it takes me so long, I've lost the appetite to shop and whatever. He said, but not just any bridge. He said, if we go to Santiago Calatrava, he said, in fact, I've basically made business cards with your logo and my name on it, and I've made an appointment with Santiago Calatrava, the Spanish-speaking world's most famous architect. So we won't just build a bridge, we'll build a landmark, an icon, this kind of artery that becomes an artwork that we don't have anything like this in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. We don't have a Big Ben or a Sydney Opera House. We have a pathetic little obelisk. So let's build this, and it'll become this kind of famous part of the city. And they did. Now, it cost $6 million rather than $4 million, which is what I love about creatives. Who cares about the budget? But in the grand scheme of things, it was a rounding error. And this project was, we researched it when we were doing the book. It's basically came out as one of the most successful riverside urban regeneration projects in the world ever. The power of thinking heretically, being brave. What I love about it is that he followed Jorge Heyman, the advice of the 20th century's greatest philosopher, everyone agree, Elvis Presley, that he walked a mile in someone else's shoes. He kind of got inside their heads. He didn't think of it from KPIs or what's in it for us as a developer, as a marketer. What's in it for them? Let's get inside the psychology and be empathetic, and let's... So, that's it. So basically, that's what I think is the heart of Contagious Ideas. Prioritize people, and that gets you to some of the best creative, heretical questions you possibly can. Boils down to this. Don't be Miley, be more Elvis. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.